Okay.
Okay, we are live. What is up, YouTube? This is Justin here with Bullet Holes in the Bible, and as always, I'm super excited to be here and talk to you about something that's extremely important to me, and that is narcissistic abuse and narcissism in general and its effects on society. And today, I am just pumped, overwhelmed with excitement because I have one of my favorite narc abuse experts, Randy Fine, with me, who was both a personal mentor to me and really helped me regain my sanity after a lifetime of narcissistic abuse. But also, her books and literature and the advice she has given has been so beneficial to so many of my friends as we continue handing out her books and literature to help people recover. So Randi Fine is a narcissistic abuse expert and author. She's an author of at least 4 books that I've seen on Amazon, 2 of which I personally have read completely and I absolutely love. One is called Cliff Edge Road, which is a memoir by Randi Fine discussing all sorts of relevant topics, both to narcissistic abuse and other types of other types of information that really just helps you get perspective on what she's dealt with. And another one is Close Encounters of the Worst Kind. I have the first edition. She'll show you the second edition in a minute with the new cover. But this book really, really saved my butt and changed my perspective on so many different things. So, Randy, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself real quick and say hi, and then we'll jump into this.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Randi Fine, like Justin said. My specialty is narcissistic abuse. I'm a narcissistic abuse expert and coach to clients worldwide. I am the podcast host of a show that I've been doing for over 12 years called A Fine Time for Healing. It's a wellness podcast. And I've interviewed over 500 people. I have done this show, I think I do this show mostly twice a week. So there's always new content up, and I really try to vary that. Um, as Justin said, I'm the author of books. This is my main one, Close Encounters of the Worst Kind. And this is the new cover. So this is a second edition, and it's available in paperback and audio and in digital. The other book that Justin mentioned was Cliff Edge Road. This is a story, I tell the story of how I got to be doing what I'm doing. And it's really the progression of childhood narcissism and how it plays out in your life. And I've been told it's a page turner, so people really like that. But that's pretty much, you know, what I do. And I'm so happy to be here today to talk to all of you because this is a really important topic.
Well, again, we're psyched to have you. So, let's just jump right in because I know there's a lot of people that are very interested in narcissism because, as we know, it's a term that's getting thrown around more and more frequently lately in response to all sorts of different behaviors that we see out in society. So, generally, I think people understand narcissists as maybe just self-centered or selfishly vain individuals just around us. But although they may or may not be correct about that statement in each context, I'd like to really give some clarity to this trait so we can understand it and confront it and address it wherever necessary because it is quite a seriously destructive issue. And I know it was in my life and many other people's lives. So first of all, can you just tell us what is narcissism actually? And what is, maybe to help me distinguish between narcissism and narcissistic abuse, and why is it such a serious issue?
Okay, all right. This is a really important. They're not destructive to other people. A person who has narcissism, and really we all have narcissism to a degree because it's really kind of aligned with ego, and we have to have some ego in order to have some self-love and self-esteem. But when you meet somebody who appears to be narcissistic, they're just obnoxious. The difference is they can understand your point of view. They can put themselves in your shoes. Whether they want to or not is another story, but they have that ability. And they don't react to criticism the way somebody with narcissistic personality disorder does. Somebody who has narcissistic personality disorder, this is a mental illness in the class of what's called cluster B personality disorders. this is defined by the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which all mental health practitioners use to diagnose anything that has to do with mental health. In this cluster B disorder, you have antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic, histrionic, borderline. And antisocial is that's where you find psychopaths and sociopaths. So these are all related. This cluster B disorder is a group of disorder. They're called the empath devoid and dramatic personality disorders. So they're all aligned in that way. But somebody who has this personality disorder, they are very destructive because their entire agenda is to capture whatever they can to fulfill themselves. And that means destruction to everybody else. They have various ways of doing this, which we'll go into later. But these people have a very serious disorder that they developed prior to the age of 18 and will have till the day that they die. You never recover from narcissistic personality disorder, and it's very serious and very destructive.
Yeah, I think one of the most shocking things for me when I started studying it was, the realization, like you said, the cluster B, they're more closely related to psychopathy than people realize. And the second thing was, you mentioned, just how impossible it is to really heal people who genuinely have narcissistic personality disorder. And again, because of that, we'll talk later about what you should do when you are confronting these issues. But you also mentioned them sort of collecting, supply, so to speak. What is supply to a narcissist?
So supply to a narcissist it's the air they breathe. It is everything. It's almost, you can sort of relate it to maybe like a drug addiction, like a heroin addiction, where the person must have their drug 24/7. They have to know it's available. They have to have several sources of it. And they can't be without it, because when they're without it, a heroin addict would go into withdrawal. Well, they're pretty much the same thing. But what they do, the reason they have to have it is, and we can talk a little more about how this forms in the person, but the person with narcissistic personality disorder does not have the ability to love. They do not have the ability to feel empathy. But even more, they can't generate any good feelings inside. So if you've had a narcissist in your life and you've done calisthenics, acrobats, trying to make them happy, and you say to them, why can't you just be happy? Well, the truth of the matter is they cannot be happy. It's impossible. They do not have that ability. And so what the narcissistic personality disorder is doing, it's masking a self-loathing child that does not ever want to feel again. And so the job of this personality disorder, which is really a false self, is to make sure that little self-loathing child never feels again. And in order to do that, they must have this influx of adoration, adulation, and attention. And by keeping that going, they don't go to that horrible place, and they keep up their journey. Without it, they do. They have to go. That self-loathing child reappears, and they don't ever want that to happen.
Mm-hmm. So we're basically just talking about, needing praise constantly, right? Needing to be the focus of everyone's attention, and regardless of whatever situation's occurring external to them that doesn't really involve them, it's still to them. They're the center of attention, and they need to get their supply. And one of the things that I read about in your book in terms of supply is just like you said, they feed off of it. They have to kind of suck that energy from other people and just continuously feed their ego forever until they die. And if they don't have that, then you're no good to them. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And so they're parasitic. So it's very similar to a tick or a flea or a mosquito or something like that, which their entire agenda in the course of their day is to find warm hosts to feed off of, because they must have the blood. The narcissist is very, very vampire-like. And what's interesting is what they're looking for is not all positive. It doesn't have to be all positive. So when we talk about attention, you know how we say, the children will thrive on attention, whether it's negative or positive.
Mm-hmm.
The narcissist is the same. What they thrive on is emotion and reaction. So much of what they do is to solicit emotion and reaction from us. They need it.
Mm.
And when we when we don't give that to them, it destroys them. So attention is any way they can get it. And most of the abuse that you will experience from narcissists is them soliciting something from you, which is why they will go to such dark, awful, accusatory places and blame, because they want you to go, no, how can you say that? That to them is supply.
Mm. So yeah, even when they're gaslighting you and getting that negative reaction, they're still just getting your energy from you. So yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, my internet is acting strange this morning. I don't know what's going on.
Can you edit out from that
Yeah.
point?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll edit that part out, but we're still live, so we'll keep moving forward. But essentially, what I was asking you is, what are some of the telltale signs that we're dealing with a narcissist, and what are some of the techniques that they use that we can easily recognize?
Okay. Um, when you're dealing with a narcissist, you're going to notice that something is not right. You don't feel right. But you can't put your finger on it because the tactics that narcissists use are very, very covert for the most part, and there's a campaign of abuse, and they started out slowly to the point where you don't feel it happening. And one of the ones we hear a lot about is gaslighting.
Mm.
Gaslighting is supposed to make you feel off balance and crazy. It's supposed to train you to not trust your intuition,
Mm.
and that when you see something, hear something, feel something, that you're wrong. Narcissists train us to go from the intuition that we have naturally that tells us whether something's true or false to programming in our heads that they put in there so that we learn to distrust what we're seeing and feeling. Another one is stonewalling. Stonewalling is when they do something that prevents something from happening. So, in other words, you could say, I really want to go to a concert. It's on, you know, November 2nd, and let's get tickets so we can go. Okay, 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 let me check it out. And then they put it off and put it off. And every time you ask, no, no, I'm still looking into it. And they put it off until the point where it's not even a possible anymore. But they'll do this with anything that you want, anything that you need, anything that you ask of them. They stonewall it to the point where it can't even happen anymore. Um, Hoovering, this is a big one. If you've ever felt like you've pulled away from the narcissist and then you're sucked right back in and you don't even know how it happened, why it happened. This is called hoovering. Hoovering is taken from the word hoover, which is the vacuum cleaner, sucking back in. And so hoovering is the way that the narcissist manipulates your mind to convince you that they've changed, they need you, you have some responsibility for them, and they have such a sack of things that they will use on you based on what they know about you. So often they will feign illnesses. I was just diagnosed with cancer. I need to hear from you.
Wow.
Or that's a big one. They do that a lot. Or, oh, I just got a text from you. I'm sorry it wasn't there when you never texted them.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like my mother-in-law.
um, or, so and so told me that you were really upset and I'm just checking in on you. There's a whole bunch of them that they'll use, and they're all very plausible, every one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very hard to resist. And so most people that pull away from a narcissist will take them several times to do it, because every time they get up that strength to pull away, they're sucked right back in.
Mm-hmm.
So triangulation, another one. Triangulation is where they are the center of maybe three different people. and they give each person a different kind of story or slant on a story, and it's all meant to appeal to that person's child, something bad about the other. What they do is they create animosity among the children for things that aren't even true, and this can go on for a lifetime. You can never recover it. So this is another tactic that they use. Um, Objectification. So narcissists don't see us as human beings. And if you've ever felt like a pawn on a chessboard when you were with a narcissist, it's because you are. They do not see beyond your facade. They only see what they can get from you, but they don't know who you are. They have to objectify you because in order to abuse you, they actually cannot abuse something that they can feel for. So they have to make sure you are an inanimate object, and then they can do what they want to do. And that also along the lines of that is dehumanization, where you no longer have qualities of being a human. And then I think, oh, the last one I want to talk about, flying monkeys. We've all experienced this.
Yes.
Narcissists use flying monkeys to keep their hands clean. This is the way they can manipulate other people to do what they want to do, to go after somebody, to turn against somebody because they need the support that they don't want you to have. They want to deprive you of your support system. So they engage people who otherwise are innocent. Generally, they're very much like you in that they're sensitive and understanding, compassionate, and they appeal to that nature, and they make them think that you have victimized them in the worst possible way. And then these people get enraged and they go after you. So the narcissist sits back and, I didn't say it, I didn't do it.
Man, it's like that permanent martyrdom syndrome, right?
Yep.
They create and pick problems until someone reacts, and then make themselves the martyr, and then they go tell their friends, "Oh, they're beating me up,"
Yep.
Go attack them. Yeah.
That's it. That's absolutely it.
Something you mentioned specifically was narcissistic parenting, or that relationship there, and you mentioned how they'll sort of alienate and ostracize the kids from one another, so they can keep their own supply and don't let them gang up. What are some other key factors you have to kind of keep an eye out for when you're dealing with narcissistic parents?
Well, from the time the children are born, basically the children are objects for them. And so the goal of the narcissistic parent is to never let that child develop an identity that is separate and different from the narcissist, because narcissists have children. And this is something that really confuses us, because we think a mother is maternal and a father is paternal. Not so when your parent is a narcissist, because they don't have you for reasons of watching you grow, enjoying that process, letting you fly, watching you go out in life and achieve. They don't want that. What they want is captive narcissistic supply. And so everything that they do from the time that you're a baby is really geared towards making you dependent and not able to separate from them. And we know, most of us know, with child psychology, that the way that we become adults is through gradual separation and through autonomy. And so the narcissist deprives the child of those things. So what you'll feel is, generally, children don't feel it until they're approaching adolescence or in adolescence, when the self is emerging so strongly. And around their friends, it's emerging everywhere, and they just want to be them. And that's when the narcissist gets the cruelest, because that's when they really, really just denigrate their everything about them. They just put them down to the point where the child just can't even break away, because not only do they feel guilty, they feel insecure, they feel worthless. So the process that you're going to see is a gradual one until it really hits. And then you're going to notice, I can't be myself. I can't say what I want. I have to do it their way. And we're trained that if we don't, we experience the worst punishment and rage that one could ever want, expect to happen. So they train you to never want to feel that. And so they create compliance in their children.
Yeah, and that it kind of sounds like Rapunzel's tower in a way, especially the newer version of it. It's this constant issue. That's probably like the worst case of maternal, narcissism I've ever seen in my life. But it's this constant, dripping of self-doubt and inability and questioning all your decisions, right? And it kind of keeps people trapped. I know one friend right off the top of my head, I'm not going to say their name, who is, I think she's probably 26 now, and she's still being constantly dragged back to her home state, to her mom's beck and call, for issues that her mom creates for herself. But she, as a young empathetic, child of this narcissist, she's just trained to just whatever her mom needs, got to snap right back and go, give mom what she needs.
There's an enmeshment that occurs in with the narcissistic, especially the narcissistic mother. They enmesh us emotionally and psychologically with them. So it doesn't matter if you're on the other side of the world, you still feel responsible, connected. You feel like every thought you have, you're checking it against what would mom think.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I was raised. So I had to break through that, and I know how difficult that can be.
So speaking of which, what are some key traits that typically show up in adult children of narcissistic abuse?
Okay, so I actually wanted to go to my book here so that I make sure that I cover that well.
Once again, guys, very good book, Close Encounters of the Worst Kind.
Okay, so, as an adult child of narcissistic abuse, you can learn about your past, you can heal from your past, you can even make peace with your past, but you will never understand it because this is not relatable. It's nonsense, and you can't make sense out of nonsense. But narcissistically abused adult children of narcissistic abuse, they grow up with a tremendous amount of problems. One of the major one that they'll notice is problems with their relationships. So they're always searching for the self. They don't know who they are. And I get this a lot from people. I'll say to them, so tell me about yourself. And it's like a blank stare. Well, I don't know who I am. They don't know who they are. They don't know what's best for them. They can't make decisions. They believe that they're flawed. They're not good enough. They're not good looking enough. They're not talented enough. They're not smart enough. And they tend to get taken advantage of because they're very vulnerable to victimization by people like narcissists. Okay. No matter how old they are, they never feel like a grown-up. You always feel like your parent's child. And you could be 40, 50, 60 years old if you haven't healed from this, and you're still going to feel like your parent's child. You don't feel like a grown-up because of what I explained, that your parent had sabotaged your stages of emotional development. Adult children experience anger, anxiety, depression, other emotions that they feel they have little control over, or maybe no control over. They are constantly being taken over by these emotions, and they don't really know how to regulate them. Self-love and self-esteem, big issues, feelings of worthlessness and inadequacy. And these are difficult to overcome. They're prone to self-blame, shame, feelings of humiliation. And this is something, where our abuser sort of plants it in our head, and then we go on with the abuse. We continue to abuse ourselves by the things that we say to ourselves. They're usually over-responsible or over-caring. They feel like their worth is dependent on what they can do for other people. And they feel like they have to talk a lot about things. But generally, adult children of narcissistic abuse will talk a lot about, they'll overshare about their life. They talk and talk and talk. Yep. Yeah.
That's me.
And you have to, because you're so confused about what happened to you, that you're talking and you're talking and you're talking because you're trying to make sense out of it, and you never can. They wonder if something's wrong with them or if they're going crazy, because no one can relate to their experiences. So when they tell people, look, this happened, people are going, really? Or, well, listen, relationships take two people. So what did you do to cause that?
Right.
And then they'll say, my gosh, you've been dealing with this for decades. Just get over it already. And the truth is that if you could, you would have, but you can't because you're stuck. And then you have this conflicted feeling of being around your parents. You don't like them. You think you're supposed to love them. This is a tremendous guilt causing thing that, it's like you don't want to admit to yourself that you really don't like these people, because you're supposed to love them. And they're supposed to love you, and you think they love you, and all that gets mixed up into confusion. So that's a lot of what the adult child will experience.
And like you said, there, in a way, you didn't use this word, but in a way, narcissists kind of groom their own supply source through their children, and so we grow up and we still believe this stuff, and so we're still prone to, even though I get in a million fights with my parents and then we stop talking for a couple of weeks, I inevitably get vacuumed right back in again with the same martyrdom stuff. Well, I didn't have the best upbringing either. I'm not perfect. Come on back to your daddy. Whatever. And you're just like, no one's perfect, and you apply whatever thinking you want and empathy to the situation, and you get into this Stockholm syndrome mindset permanently and forever, where you just always, okay, I forgive you. Okay, beat me up some more, and we'll talk about some strategies here in a second and how to heal, because that's really what you've done for me the most, is help me heal from that type of stuff and to remove that abuse from my life.
The word grooming is perfect. It is. It's a perfect word, because it is groom. We hear grooming about pedophiles, that they groom their victim. That's really what narcissists do. They do groom you. And just one thing about that hoovering, when I tell you they will do anything, and it's very convincing, they will contract illnesses that will land them in the hospital to get you back. It's not just their acting. They can manifest things that will happen that you'll go, well, now I gotta go. Now I gotta visit my parents. Or a lot of them threaten suicide. I'm gonna kill myself. A lot of them do that. Wow. I'm gonna kill myself. And then what did the children say, or the family say? Oh, no, we love you. We love you. Don't do that. Supply.
Yep.
The best thing to do, if you have a parent that ever does that, or even a spouse that ever does, you call 911. Oh, okay, you're going to do that. So, and if every time you do that, an ambulance shows up and they go, well, I'm okay, eventually they stop crying.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And with the manifesting thing, I really agree with that. Actually, one of the books I was talking about on my TikTok yesterday, and by the way, if you guys don't follow me on TikTok, I'm at bullet holes in the Bible over there, but there's this book called Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. I don't know if you've read any of his literature, but he's proving through neuroscience studies that the brain does manufacture chemicals based on every emotion we feel. We're actually experiencing and feeling that emotion because it's an actual chemical concoction that our brain has literally released into our body. So it is very, very possible to worry yourself sick and to heal yourself conversely. So I'm totally on board with that thinking. All right, so let's jump into, I know a lot of people out here are dealing with narcissistic spouses, or they maybe are suspicious that they're dealing with narcissistic spouses, or they have in the past. So let's talk about narcissists from the marital or life partner perspective. What are narcissistic people like both in romantic and long-term relationships?
Okay, all right. So there's generally a pattern of how a narcissist will capture a romantic relationship. There are variations of it, but generally there's a love bombing phase that happens when you first meet this person where you believe you've met your soulmate because they mirror you, they interview you, they get information from you, and then they match it. So all of a sudden, you don't even realize what you've said, and now all of a sudden, this person has so much in common with you. They like the same music, they've had the same past experiences, so forth and so on. And this is meant to put you in a state of euphoria and delusion to the point where you aren't thinking clearly. And they know exactly what they're doing during this time. A narcissist can brainwash someone within days. And this is not something that has to take place long term. So if you are exposed to a narcissist and you're vulnerable, you don't know how to set up resistance to it, um, you can be brainwashed. And before you know it, you're in a relationship. And there's always a pivotal moment in which you notice a big change. It's like the person you met is gone and you don't know who this person is. The person before loved and liked everything about you. You were amazing. Now they don't like anything about you and you can't get it right. But because we're logical thinkers, we think that we've done something to make this change happen. We can't imagine that what we met was a fake person. It was a facade. It was an actor. It wasn't real. None of it was real. It was meant to lock us in, to hook us. And so what you'll start to notice is you'll you'll be put down for pretty much everything you do. Or it may not be so obvious. It may be subtle. It may be things like, oh, you're going to eat that. Oh, I thought you were on diet. Oh, you're going to eat that.
That
Okay.
that's exactly it. The way they say it like that,
Hmm.
that's it.
Hmm. Um,
Oh, you
or
really like your hair like that? Like,
yes,
yes.
yes, yes, yes. Things like that. But it gets, as it progresses, it gets more clear of what they're saying. And they tell you that you're wrong about everything. They're right, you're wrong. And so they develop a control and an omnipotence over you so that you believe that this person really knows more than you know. They know better for you than you know. And, at first you try to, um, at first you resist it. At first you challenge them. But you learn through the grooming that challenging them isn't worth it because you it's hard, you have more to deal with. It's worse for you. So you become what's called you get learned helplessness to the point where it's like you're not even going to bother. So they through this process they turn you into like a puppet
Hmm.
where you don't really have yourself, you can't make a decision. And you're going to feel like you're losing your mind. You're going to feel like something's wrong with you, and the narcissist is fine. You don't know they're a narcissist at this point, but they're fine. You're crazy. They're telling you you're crazy. They're telling you that your perspective on things is overblown and dramatic, and um, there's so much control over you that you just feel like you're getting lost. And really, this doesn't happen for a while. Some people feel it right away, but they dismiss it because what they say to themselves is because they're being accused of being the at fault for everything that happens in that relationship. What they do is they blame themselves. Well, I must have done something
Hmm.
because you're being told you did it.
Hmm.
If you say to them, I don't like the way you're treating me, they'll say, well, it's all because of what you're doing.
Hmm.
If you weren't doing that, I wouldn't be treating you this way. And so after a while, you begin to think, oh, maybe I'm asking too much.
Hmm.
Maybe I want too much. Maybe I'm selfish. They tell you you're selfish. So after a while, you begin to realize you don't know who you are anymore.
Right.
And you feel as if leaving this person would be like losing a limb
Mm-hmm.
because you're so connected. They are defining you. And to be away from them would mean like half of you has died, and it's that bad.
Yes, man. So much of what you said just hits on every cylinder with my ex. You know, my ex partner, we could say. But yeah, I mean, for me, it was a lot of just self doubt being pushed on me. You know, she would say, "Oh, look, I'm the practical one. You're the dreamer. You know, we need to do it my way because you want to go to the extremes. You want to take risks." And we're talking about like, you know, I'd say something to her like, well, I was trying to learn the guitar and I was just playing and playing for hours and hours, and it was always just like, you know, when are you gonna stop playing the guitar? It's kind of annoying. And then you know, I'd say something like, hey, maybe I could become like a Christian music artist one day, and she just laughed me out of the room, like to the extent that I really wanted to quit playing altogether, and I did quit playing for a long time. So like it's just like anything good or about me was always either, you know, needed to be downplayed or pushed away, or that's impractical. And you know, it's funny because when we had a couple of arguments, the truth came flying out many times where she was just like, look, I'm jealous of you, okay? I hate that you have all these friends and that people like you and that you have a career and that, you know, you have something to go do every day. And so from there on out, I knew our relationship was just toast. You know, if your life partner is jealous of you, then you're just screwed because you have to be partnered with someone who wants to see you succeed, right? I mean,
That's right. You know,
so
and a relationship is two people working towards the same goal. And in a relationship, you'll notice growth. The more you're together, the more you're achieving, the more you're growing together. When you're with a narcissistic partner, you will notice that you could be married for 40 years and you never grow from the time you got married. There's
mm,
no growth whatsoever in that relationship. Um, that's not normal.
yeah,
So, you also, if you really stop and think about it, you realize that you're holding up the entire thing. That if you stopped pleasing and kowtowing and catering and all these things, would you have a relationship? And the answer is no, you would
right.
not, because you're holding up the entire
Isn't that ironic? Oh man, so let's just go on to the next step here is something I'm personally interested in, as you know, is spiritual abuse. I've actually done some studying on religious abuse specifically. I don't know if it's probably not exactly the same thing, but in your book you talk about spiritual abuse quite extensively. Tell us a little bit about how that's connected to narcissistic abuse.
thing. Okay. So, narcissists have, they know their victims, their targets. Because they know where every one of your buttons are, every one of them through the years. They find out many of them in this love bombing stage before you even secure this relationship, but they know where they are. And if you are somebody who is faith based, um, and you are believing in things, it's very, very easy. The Bible, the Torah, the whatever. There's a lot of room for interpretation. A lot of room for interpretation. And so what they do is they insert themselves in these words or these phrases or whatever, and slant the interpretation to make you look like you are a sinner. You are. They'll say things like, "Well, I'm going to heaven, but you're not, because look how you think."
Right.
They tend to use the Ten Commandments a lot.
Mhm.
All the rules of the Ten Commandments. Thou is supposed to this. And I used the word omnipotence before. They this allows them to live out their fantasies of omnipotence. Um, it allows them to speak for God or whatever supreme being they worship. It proves their righteousness. I am righteous and I am right. It demonstrates superiority over you. It shows that the God or supreme being that you're worshiping is on his or her side, meaning the narcissist. They're on you're out. You're not even there.
You're killing it. You're killing it right now.
Um, And they then become the focus of the victim's worship.
Mm-hmm.
And even when there's not spiritual abuse, they do become worshipped. We do worship the narcissist in our life, um, because they speak for us, they are us. So they masquerade as people of faith to fool others, that further their self-centered agenda of controlling them. And I've had situations where a spouse would become a clergy, uh, a, a, a pastor, or something like that, so that they can then not only control the family, but they can control all the people
Mm-hmm.
who come there through the language that they share. Because when you go to a house of worship, it's supposed to be truth. It's supposed to be truth as it's coming as pure as can be. So what they say, people believe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they um, they use it to enforce marital entitlement. So if you've been very abusive, if your spouse has been or partner's been very abusive to you, and you just cannot have a sexual relationship with them, they will use this. Well, this is your job. This is your
Mm.
responsibility. You must.
Wow.
They instill guilt, fear, and shame if you don't comply.
Absolutely.
Um, they ridicule your beliefs. That's You believe that? That's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing that once gave you comfort and support, especially in a relationship where you're not getting it at all, is now the source of pain for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that's been taken from you as well. If you got into this relationship as a person of faith, um, and you were grounded based on that, okay, well, I still got God, I still got my religion, I still have that, and they take that away from you. So they're depriving you of any source of comfort for
Mm-hmm.
yourself. And so, it's important to understand that faith is supposed to elevate you, not bring you down. So if somebody is doing this to you, then this is false. They're a false prophet. And there are many false prophets out there.
Absolutely. I know of a few I could name off right now that I'm not going to, but you just literally described in detail some of the relationships I've had with people in the ministry online over the last several years who to this day still exhibit the exact traits you just mentioned. And one of the most frustrating things is the form of spiritual abuse whereby people will use sort of a subjective road marker for morality, like the Holy Spirit or something like that, or even the Bible. You could say is subjective because there's 30,000 denominations. So there's a lot of disagreement about how you can interpret and apply it. But when people start with this, oh well, the Spirit of God told me X, and then other people are actually listening to that and believing it, you're like, this is a recipe for disaster right here. So it's
which is how cult leaders suck people in. And narcissistic abuse is almost identical to being in a cult. It's the same thing.
I really agree with you 100%.
So what you're talking about is a leader who is speaking for God and saying, this is the path.
Mm-hmm.
This is the way to happiness. I know it. Follow me. Listen to me. You don't know.
Yep. And then gaslight you if you think you do know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's just get into some strategies. I know that's probably something people are very interested in, and for me, it was the number one thing I was interested in. So how do we deal with narcissistic people, and then ultimately talk about long-term narcissistic abuse and healing from long-term narcissistic abuse in a minute here. But so first, let me just ask you right off the top, what is Narc talk, and how is that used?
Okay, narcissists have a language of their own, and it's uncanny. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, they will use the same phrases for the same reasons. But when a narcissist speaks to you, you cannot pay attention to the words, because the words do not mean anything. It's word salad. It's just a bunch of garbled stuff. but it's meant to elicit something in you. So I'll give you a few of them. So like when a narcissist says, I love you, it means one of three things. I've heard those words before by others, and it seems to be an endearing way of manipulating you into loving them. Or they'll say, I love you if they feel like you're pulling away, and they want to suck you back in because they know you're going to melt. This person has not expressed this feeling very much. And when they say it, it's like, oh, yes,
Finally.
It's crumbs that we feel is a feast. Or another thing is they want you to say it back because that's narcissistic supply. So if they say, I love you, you're going to say, I love you too. There it is, done. When they say you're too sensitive, which they all say, it means that you're refusing to tiptoe around them. It means that you're trying to put up some kind of boundary or barrier, and they don't want it. So they accuse you of being too sensitive. So you tear that back down. When they say, a lot of them say, you never do anything for me. What they're saying is, what I want in the moment, you're not doing. And this is maddening because if you've been in a relationship with someone like this, or emotional hostage situation, as I like to call it, you have bent over backwards trying to please this person and make this person happy. And then all of a sudden they say, you don't do anything for me. And you're like, what? And then you go into a whole thing. But what about when I did this? And what about when I did that? How can you say that? Narcissists can't remember any of that. They don't hold on to that. It's only what you can do for the moment. And it's a way of soliciting emotion and reaction from you. When they say, look how much I've sacrificed for you, or look what I've done for you, it means feel guilty. Because what I've done for you, even though it's a small percent, and I'm going to make it look like it's everything, and you need to appreciate me. What do you want from me? How dare you ask me to give any part of myself to you? I can't do that. I'm only trying to help. They say that a lot. I'm only to help you.
Yeah. Right? I'm only telling you you look ugly because I want to help you.
Right. It means that I am manipulating you. I have a self-serving agenda, and I'm burrowing in there and trying to get you to behave a certain way.
Mother knows best.
Mother knows best. You've never cared about me. You never cared about me. It means you haven't given them anything today. I have nobody. It doesn't mean
I've heard that so much. Yeah.
That's the narcissist. That's the martyr in the narcissistic mother. I have nobody, even though you're there.
Right.
When your siblings are there, I have nobody. It's because you're supposed to say, oh, no, we love you.
You have me, Mom. Yeah.
Right, we're here.
Yeah.
Well, what do you need, Mom? What do you need? And so basically, and there's another part of Narc speak that's called circular talking. And what they'll do is, if you say something or ask them a question, they will speak in circles, and you'll notice it doesn't mean anything. They just talk and talk and talk and talk. So they have a very peculiar way of communicating with us. And the only thing that I can say is that when a narcissist speaks, they're either lying or trying to manipulate you. So the words do not matter. And you've got to go, la, 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 la. You've got to tune them out because the words don't mean anything. So if your narcissist is saying, I love you, and you don't feel loved, that's the truth, not the words. But they train us to follow with the programming.
Very good point. Well, okay, so I know there's you could probably, I'm sure you could make millions of videos responding to millions of scenarios of how to deal with narcissists in all types of situations, which is why if anyone's dealing with this type of abuse, I recommend they just contact you directly and get counseling from you. We'll talk about that in a minute. But what would you say are the most important? I mean, it's probably hard for you to pick, right? But
Well, I know where to start, kind of.
yeah, what are the most important strategies for dealing with generally narcissistic people?
Okay. So it's important that you know what you're dealing with, because although they seem like they're very complicated, complex, they're not. And it's how I do the work I do and do it so well, because when you know one, you know them all. So when you figure out what they're about, and my book, Close Encounters of the Worst Kind, is a really, really good way to get this book to get that education, because you want to know the ins and outs of who they are, what they think, and how they operate. Um, but as I said before, one of the things to know is that they feed on your emotion and your reaction, and that when they say things to hurt you, they're not trying to hurt you, they're trying to get you to react. So many of us have heard the term gray rocking. Gray rocking is being that gray rock in front of the narcissist, meaning that they get nothing from you. You give nothing. You talk in a monotone voice. You answer questions with a few words. So they'll go into a whole thing and you go, "You're right." Or, "Oh, that's how you feel." Or very simple things where you're, because they want to suck you into a conversation of circular
Mm-hmm.
talking, where you're going to say one thing and before you know it, you're going to be blamed. You're accusing them, now you're being blamed. Okay, so they
Mm-hmm.
want to suck you into that. So not reacting and not giving them emotion. If you've ever felt like you want to retaliate against your narcissist, this is the way to do it. Everything about narcissistic abuse is it's backwards. It's all backwards. So if you want to get revenge against the narcissist, you withdraw supply from them. You don't yell at them. You don't call them names. You don't try to retaliate or become rebellious. You withdraw. That hurts them to the core of who they are. Another thing is boundaries. Boundaries, which most people who get sucked into these relationships are sucked in because they've never developed a boundary. And that comes from living in a home of dysfunction where parents don't want you to have boundaries, so they don't teach them to you. They don't give you the skills for living. And because they want full access to you all the time. So here you are in a relationship, you don't know the first thing about setting a boundary, saying, "No, that is not good for me, and I don't accept that." But what people tend to do wrong with boundaries is they'll say, "I don't ever want you to say that to me anymore." And then they say to me, "But then they keep saying it." So when you set a boundary must have a consequence that is stated. You don't set a boundary and think, "Oh, they're going to figure this out." No, you have to say, "This is the boundary, and this is the consequence for crossing it." And generally, because when we start off setting boundaries and we're not comfortable with them, it's best to start consequences that you can fulfill. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe you won't hear from me for 2 days, or you won't be able to see the kids for a week, or something like that. Something that you can then do. And you have to, because they will cross your boundary. It's just like children. Children test boundaries. So they will cross the boundary, and then you have to go forward with the consequence that you set so they understand. And then the next time you set the boundary and you make the consequence worse. So it has to be a process of doing this before you feel comfortable that you can say, "You know what? You do this again, I'm out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Never will you see me again." And when you say that, you have to be prepared to follow through on that. So you never want to say that until because if you threaten it and then you keep coming back, they got your number.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the main thing for healing from narcissistic abuse is self-love and self-esteem. And it's something that you've been taught is wrong. You are not supposed to love yourself. You're not supposed to like yourself. You're not supposed to value yourself. You have no worth.
Mm-hmm.
And for you to feel that you do is narcissistic, because you've been told.
Mm-hmm.
You're narcissistic. Every time you say, but what about me? You're
Mm-hmm.
so narcissistic, they will turn it on you. So we, so we learn not to. We're trained not to like ourselves because it's very scary. But self love and selfishness are completely opposite things. Self love means you are replenishing your supply of love within.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely within you. It's not affecting anybody, it's not hurting anybody. To be selfish means you're taking something from someone else and keeping it for yourself. But self love is so important, especially to narcissistic abuse victims and survivors, because most of them are caregivers and helpers, and they want to fix people and they want to do more. But what they'll notice when they don't have self love is that when they give to other people, they are emptying out themselves, and they're tired and they're drained and stressed. They want to do it and they're going to keep doing it, but there's no reserve.
Mm-hmm.
When you pour in that self-love, and there's many ways to do it, and I talk about it in the book. um, when you pour in that self-love, you have this overflowing well. You can give and you can give and you can give, and you never run out, and so
Mm-hmm.
it makes you a better giver. And there's low contact or limited contact and no contact. These are I never advise anybody go no contact until they've worked through their issues, because you will have tremendous guilt if you do. You're going to say, everyone says to themselves, but I never said why I wasn't speaking to them anymore. But I never really, meanwhile, you've told them all your entire life or throughout your entire relationship. But all of a sudden you feel guilty that you haven't told them why you're doing what you're doing. And they're going to say, you're going to get texts and emails that are, why are you doing this?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to feel like you haven't shared. No contact comes when you have worked through your issues and you've made a decision. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do this anymore, and this is permanent. I'm not going to go back. But you can always have limited contact, and limited contact is, you do this through the use of boundaries. It's temporary. You cannot sustain a limited contact relationship with a narcissistic abuser because their MO is abuse. They want to abuse you.
Mm-hmm.
So you can only hold them back for so long before they burst through, and you just can't do it anymore.
I told you, I watched this happen play out both with my sister first, my older sister. She's a year older than me, and then myself. Just in the last 2 years or so, where my dad, was, I think has full blown narcissistic personality disorder, because every single thing. I mean, he's the textbook. He's the definition of. But specifically, here's an example where my sister, who a couple, maybe 10 years ago, was doing some Christian counseling education. She was receiving an education in Christian counseling at a Christian school or something, and she read this book called Boundaries. And that book talked exactly about what you're talking about, dealing with setting boundaries on the narcissistic abuse in your life and things like that. And at the time, I had no idea what any of this meant. I wasn't interested, and I was in the Marine Corps and stuff like that. But she cut off my dad. It wasn't sudden. She wrote letters, and lots of letters. And she finally said, that's it. I'm cutting you off, no more. And ever since that day, all the rest of the kids, for one, felt the wrath of my dad. Now he's a martyr. But every opportunity to this day he can get to poke her, to show up at her house in another state, to send her an email, I found your new email address, to lay a blog on her website, any chance he can get to be like, I can still touch you, he does it. They send Christmas presents to her kids every year, and she sends them right back. I mean, it's just stupid game, but he cannot stop. It just bothers him so much that she set a boundary. And I listened to him complain about these boundaries that she set for so long until I set them myself, and I don't have to hear it anymore.
Good for you. Sometimes siblings will try to take the brunt of it because they don't want their other siblings to have to deal with the repercussions of it. that
Mm-hmm.
this happens a lot. But I just have to say that in a narcissistic family, it is not a family,
Mm-hmm.
because a narcissist is not a father, it's not a mother, it's a narcissist. So if you have a narcissistic father, you don't have a father, you have a narcissist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's not going to behave like a father in any way, shape, or form. And
He
his
didn't.
goal, right? And like I was talking about the tactics before, the things that they use, the triangulation and thing. His goal is to keep everybody in that family at arm's length. Everybody, nobody connects. There's no cohesiveness. There's no, altruition. There's nothing, no respect, no nothing. It's faked for a while, but when push comes to shove, when they're tested, you see everybody's in their own corner.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how they survive through childhood, because children are not born with coping mechanisms. They don't have them. They're taught to them.
Mm-hmm.
Narcissistic parents do not teach them coping mechanisms. So here you have children in an intolerable environment, to the point where their subconscious, they're going to go psychotic. They're going to break if they have to continue to deal with it. The subconscious will step in and will give them maladaptive ways of dealing with it.
Good point.
Uh, mhm. So narcissistic personality disorder is one of those, but that is the one on steroids. Most
Mm-hmm.
children will become pleasers. They'll become very compliant. They'll become meek. Some will become rebellious. There's all different ways. Some dissociate,
Mm-hmm.
so they basically go somewhere else when
Mm-hmm.
this is happening, so they can deal with it. Um, but every child is finding a different way to do this, and so the thing about that is when you get to be adults, you don't magically get healthy coping mechanisms.
Right.
You are using the ones that you developed or your subconscious developed for
Mm-hmm.
you, and you're operating your adult life from them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why things aren't working for you, because you don't know how to properly cope.
Right. Don't have the tools to even deal with, and most people don't even realize what they're dealing with first, and then they don't have the tools to deal with it. You
Right.
know.
Like I talk about in my book Cliff Edge Road, I mean, you wouldn't believe what my life was,
Oh my
because
gosh, crazy, crazy testimony.
crazy life. I had a crazy life, and my life
Mm-hmm.
doesn't look anything like that. So the other side of healing is very beautiful.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
I know you know that.
I know it better than anyone. I feel like the most grateful human on earth right now. Honestly, I can't say enough. I mean, so like, I love that you're talking about self love too, because that has been my. Everyone here knows that that's been my primary message for like the last couple months, both on YouTube and TikTok, is self love and how incredibly important it is. And maybe it's just something that's incredibly important to me because it's something that I needed so badly. I mean, I literally was the textbook of everything you've mentioned. It's my life. So I want to mention one more thing before we get into closing and talking about how they can contact you and things like that. But what does it mean to, I think it's related to self-love in a lot of ways. What does it mean to let go of unhealthy guilt?
Okay. All right. So the purpose of guilt is to make you accountable for something you do wrong. That's why we have that emotion, or that whatever it is. Um, what we're trained by narcissists to do is to feel responsible for everything that happens, and then to be punished and feel guilty for doing it, whether you've done it or whether you have not. So you're always taking the blame, you're always taking the responsibility, you're always shouldering the weight of everything that goes on. And you're told that you are not loving, you don't care, you aren't giving of yourself, you aren't being there for that person. You're told all these things, and you're convinced after a while that it's all your fault. And narcissists, you know, they are the best. They are Academy Award winning actors and actresses. And when I say that, when they morph into a character, or when they become a character, it's seamless. They can cry, they can do everything that's associated with that character, because narcissists do not have one personality. They do not have a personality. They create them based on what they need in each situation. So in every relationship that a narcissist is in, there will be different personalities. And some liken it to multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder, because they are different people at all times. But that's not really what's happening. It's survival for them. They need to solicit supply, and so they have to create these characters. So they're going to, especially like narcissistic mothers, tend to be martyrs. How could you do this to the family? Look at you, you're leaving. And then everybody else in the family, because they're all just as brainwashed and programmed, then how could you do this to your mother? And then you get all this stuff slammed on you. So you become guilty for things you didn't do. You become guilty because you're trying to heal. And everyone will try to make you feel bad about that. Everyone. And so false guilt is when you're blaming yourself for something that you didn't do. And as long as you stay in false guilt, you are going to feel miserable, because it's a way of beating yourself up. And it's the opposite of self-love. So with self-love, we want to give ourselves as much as possible. We don't want to be that. We don't want to continue the abuse that we've experienced. We want to give ourselves wonderful things. Every time you say, but I should have, why didn't I? I was supposed to. It's my fault. Whenever you say those things, it's the opposite of self-love, and it is self-abuse. And it's a matter of listening to what you've got to begin to pay attention to what you're saying to yourself, because what you're saying to yourself is keeping you in pain. When you stop saying these things to yourself, you won't be in pain anymore.
That's huge. Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. I mean, honestly, I mean, there are so many different ways to approach healing from narcissistic abuse, but the first and most important one that you showed me was just stop telling yourself anything negative. You know, like we know who, generally speaking, in our close circle, we can trust to tell us the truth about ourselves, and you know, who's empathetic towards us and things like that. And you know, one of the best pieces of advice you gave me was, like, you know who you can trust to tell you whether or not you're really on track or not. You don't need to sit here and convince yourself that you're constantly, you know, not good enough. You know, you're not doing a good enough job. Maybe you're not being empathetic enough to your abuser, or you know, all these other crazy thoughts we have. Sorry. But you're learning to just love myself first in speech only, because it's hard to just go, okay, fine, I do love myself. You know, it's very hard to do it. So first in speech only, and in writing, you know, just kind of doing affirmations and saying positive things to yourself in the mirror or in your journal, or even just stopping yourself when you're thinking or saying, you know, that you're not good enough, or something's wrong with you that, you know, really isn't, and just say, no, don't say that about yourself anymore. That's, you know, you are what you say. So, but like you said, I mean, there's like this detachment we have from our own identity when we're stuck to these narcissists. And so when you start to try and start building your own identity, or recovering your own identity, or even creating one, maybe even for the first time, self-love is like required just to get moving, you know?
Absolutely is. You know, one of the things that you can do is write yourself an I love you letter, you know, or every day you can have a journal and say, I love me because, and find something about you, because, you know. And then the other thing is focusing more on gratitude than on loss, because there's a lot that you lose, and it can be overwhelming. But there's also a lot that you have, a lot that you gain, and a lot that you can be very grateful for. So when you start sinking into despair, if you hold on to gratitude and try to let the other things go as much as possible, that will also help pull you up out of this.
Absolutely. So, you know, in closing here, I just think I can't speak enough on how valuable your time has been to my life. I think we've done, I don't know, 3 or 4 sessions or something like that. And each one I walk away with so many resources, You always give me more books, more websites. Hey, check out this therapy, check out this stuff, check out this channel. And every time it's just a treasure trove of resources and advice. And man, like what shocked me, when I was, of course, new to this whole thing was we started talking about some of the issues I was experiencing with my family, and you're just like, you just already knew like way too much, just based on your own experience about, oh, you're okay, so your ex is probably acting like this, your oldest son is probably acting like that. And I was just like, how do you know this? So this is so important to get professional help, if you're dealing with and struggling with these types of issues, because it's such a shortcut. It's hard to dig yourself out of this because without the right tools. So I just want to ask you to give us your closing thoughts, if you would, and then remind us again where the best place is to find you, your podcast, YouTube, and website, things like that.
Okay, great. What you said, first I want to just acknowledge what you said. And some people get really annoyed at me. Well, how do you know?
Because I do.
Right. Because if this isn't happening, then you're not dealing with a narcissist, because it just is.
Mm-hmm.
And I said earlier, that it's what makes me good at what I do, is that this is so very predictable.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what I want to say is this is a way to almost begin to release you from this. And you have to understand narcissistic victim syndrome, on a soul level, we choose it. But on a physical incarnation level, we do not. And so it's a victimization situation. And people don't like that word. But the word victim can help to release you, because people will ask themselves over and over, how could somebody like me get into something like this? What did I do? Is this karma? Did I hurt somebody in my last life? Or, or am I bad? Or, they begin to ask themselves a million things about why this is happening, and why, if they deserve it, and if they're being punished, and so forth and so on. You have to understand, narcissists are predators and parasites. So they pick out their targets. They don't target everybody. They target those they believe that they can brainwash and groom. So they've picked you out. Not only have they picked you out, but they've tested you. And I talked about this in the beginning with the love bombing. This is where they interview you and they ask you things, and they'll test you often by doing something like, they'll do something that should be appalling, in a beginning relationship, like, oh yeah, I was thinking about my ex-girlfriend the other day, but you know what? You're more important. And then the kind target will say, oh no, don't worry about that. That's okay. Don't worry about that. So you're forgiving, you're understanding, they're testing you. They need somebody who looks past their faults. And they're going to measure you and see if you're that person. So they're examining you from the very beginning. And have no doubt, this is all conscious, hyper conscious. I mean, very, very deliberate. So they've picked you out. There's nothing wrong with you, except you're an amazing person, because narcissists only pick the very best. So they can't abuse people like themselves. They can only abuse the very best. So if you're asking yourself what you did, first of all, you did nothing. The only thing you did wrong is you didn't know that these kind of people existed, or characters really existed. That's the only thing you're responsible for, is not knowing. If you continue to repeat the pattern, well then, yes, you have some responsibility in that. But the best thing about this, there is a silver lining in all of this. And I'm a very spiritual person, and I'm seeing this is coming in really strong right now, in this time of our lives, and this evolution of mankind. It's very, very strong right now. And I've actually talked to spirits and channels from over on my podcast to find out what this is about, But there's a lot of people now that are coming in that are doing immense healing. Narcissistic abuse is the best, the most powerful catalyst for your healing, because what it does is it floats everything about you that you need to work on up to the surface, and it's all in your face. You can't look away. It's like, if I don't take care of this, I'm not going to feel okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's all brought to you in order to fix it. And it's a gift. When you fix all those things, you have an amazing life after this. That is the silver lining. So narcissistic abuse does have a benefit to it.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, again, like I feel better than I've ever felt in my life. So, yeah, I can see that. Makes sense.
But you have to get the right. Justin, you were saying you need help. Everything about narcissistic abuse is counterintuitive.
Mm-hmm.
If you think you should, you shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
If you think you shouldn't, you should. And you can't logically do that. You need somebody to release you. And what you said about being released from it quickly,
Mm-hmm.
that's the truth. If you go to a psychotherapist, you can spend years and never get to the core.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to somebody that does work like I do,
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting the core
Right.
and I pull it out real quick.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to be with me a long time.
Right.
That's not my goal. My goal isn't to keep you in therapy for years. My
Yeah.
goal is to get you on your way. So
And you've been very successful with that. I mean, in you know, the terminology we were using back then when I was, you know, I was very Christian, a lot more hyper religious at the time, was demons. You know, you're like, I'm like, I feel like these people got demons, and you're like, they do, Justin, they do.
they do. A lot of people think that they're demonic.
Yeah.
They're not.
Right.
They're in human form, but they have a very primitive, survival-based
Mm-hmm.
mind. That's it.
Right.
They don't think about the things that we think about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, I can't say enough about how grateful I am that you took the time this morning to come hang out with us and answer these questions. And so again, I just want to tell everyone, I got the links, by the way, in the description box. I linked Randi, is it randygfine.com or is it just Randi Fine?
Randygfine.com, just randygfine.com.
Cool. So underneath this video right now, you can go click on her website. You can go to her Amazon bookstore there and also to her YouTube channel. And I have to please encourage you to go to her YouTube channel, subscribe over there, so that you can stay up to date when she releases podcasts. So where are you doing your podcast primarily right now?
So if you go to my website, randygfine.com, and you go to the podcast section, there's a link to every single one I've ever done. So you can see the title and then click on it. It will take you right there. I don't put most of my podcasts up on YouTube because they're an hour, and most YouTube's things, people don't have that kind of, patient, that, whatever, attention span.
Right.
So I don't put a lot up, but I do have people that I have one therapist that I work with. She's from the UK, and we do a lot of things together. And there's some really good topics there. And I do some specifically for YouTube, so they're there. You can work with me. I just had my website redesigned. It is so easy to navigate, and you can find everything there. So if you go to randygfine.com, you can go to work with me. My schedule is right there from the site. You book it from the site. You pay from the site. It's all super, super duper easy. I do offer a free discovery call, free consultation, which is about 25 minutes. So if you're not sure I'm the right fit for you, we'll talk about it. And then I can let you know what I can do for you, or if I think I'm a good fit for you. And then after that, I offer packages and things like that so you can save money. And definitely go start listening to my podcast and become a follower of that too. The content, I mean, it's amazing. It's not all about narcissistic abuse.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wellness podcast, but because I've been doing so long, I'm on every publicist list, and I get pitches all day long, and I cherry pick.
That's awesome.
Cherry pick topics that are like different. I've never covered them before. It's a different perspective. My goal there is to give all kinds of different perspectives on living. So that people can listen and grab onto whatever feels or resonates with them. So it's called A Fine Time for Healing.
Oh,
and
cool.
Of course, the books are on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And you know, I don't make a lot on the books. I write them for you. So
Well, we definitely appreciate it.
pick up a copy.
We definitely appreciate it.
You're
All right.
welcome.
Well, for the last time, thanks, Randy. Again, I can't thank you enough. Hopefully, we'll have you on again in the future, and we'll talk about some additional topics down the road. But for everyone watching, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something from the this experience, and we'll be in touch very soon. See you guys later.
Take care. Bye-bye.
See you later.